Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Revere City Council meeting of March 4th, 2013. Please rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Roll call of the members. Councilor Arrigo.
Here.
Here. Councilor Correggio.
Here.
Here. Councilor Janino.
Here.
Here. Councilor Guanasso.
Here.
Here. Councilor Haas.
Here.
Here. Councilor Patch is absent. Councilor Penta
Here.
is here. Councilor Powers.
Here.
Here. Councilor Reardon.
Here.
Here. Councilor Zambuto.
Here.
Here. And Council President Novoselsky. Here. A quorum is present. Approval of the journal of the meeting of February 25th, 2013.
All in favor? All opposed? Vote and so ordered.
Calendar item number 1. The following motions are being reported out from various council committees pursuant to Rule 23 of the Council's Rules of Order, with a recommendation to be placed on file. 11059, motion pertaining to drafting an ordinance regulating the number and placement of satellite dishes on buildings.
Place on file.
12-008, amendment to the Rules of Order by adding a new subsection, public comments, after subsection regarding hearings.
Place on file? No, place on file. Unless you want to move it back to committee, Councilor. We're open. Okay. Next. 12-091, revision/consolidation of the City Council's Rules of Order. Councilor Reardon.
If I could be heard. Thank you very much, sir. This is a motion that I put forward, and in discussion with Councilor Arrigo, we've decided that this task is so daunting that we're probably better off sitting down and drafting up something before we actually address it with the City Council, because it's going to take several meetings and some serious work. So I recommend that it be placed on file, and Councilor Arrigo and I will address the situation as time permits.
Motion placed on file. All in favor? All opposed? Vote and so ordered.
12-246, reports regarding mishandled evidence at the state's public health drug lab regarding any Revere cases.
Motion placed on file. All in favor? All opposed? Vote and so ordered.
12-274, relative to the possible purchase of decibel meters for each sector car and for each code enforcement officer.
Councilor Guanasso.
We went to great lengths to draft a very worthy noise ordinance. Now we have to give the police officers and the rest of the public safety people who are involved with this the necessary tools to enforce this law. So what I would suggest that we get a cost factor on this and submit it to Ways and Means in preparation for our new budget that will be coming before us sometime in May, so that we get some. And I think Officer Janino is well prepared to give us this type of information that we need. So I just like to keep this in committee and send it over with the recommendation that Officer Janino meet with Ways and Means in order for us to prep for our budget that's upcoming this year.
If I may, Councilor, I don't disagree with you. But usually the mayor has to put things into the budget. We can't put them in. So my recommendation is to refer it to the mayor, for him to include it and let him get the prices.
Whatever way works.
So
well,
I would like to make a substitute, if you don't mind. Go ahead.
Well, what the intention was, is we meet with Officer Janino in Ways and Means. He has a cost figure, because if we just send this over to the mayor now, then he's going to have to do the same thing. Only we can come up with the figures and forward it to the mayor. This is what's going to cost for the enforcement of this new ordinance.
I don't mind that, but my thoughts are it takes us longer to do it. He can have somebody else do it within his staff.
Well, whatever, as long as we get some sort of help for the enforcement officers on this, because the upcoming months are coming where we're going to be concerned with the noise factor, and we want to be prepared for this.
Okay. This was put in the Ways and Means Committee, and Ways and Means hasn't met. But by the time they get the prices, they're going to be putting the budget together.
Send it to the mayor for a cost factor along
and
with submission to the
include it in the next budget.
Include it in the new upcoming budget.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So there's a motion to refer it to the mayor to get a cost factor and include it in the next budget.
Right.
Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
All opposed? Vote and so ordered.
12-074, proposed ordinance for a one-year moratorium relative to granting special permits for standing signs within the city of Revere.
Councilor Hess.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we know, this stayed in committee only because of the litigation that has been brought against the city for a particular billboard. I'd like to keep this in committee until the litigation is resolved.
Calendar item number 2, communication from the mayor relative to appointments to various boards and commissions.
Appointments Committee.
Calendar item number 3, motion presented by Councilor Correggio, that the mayor requests the DPW superintendent and the superintendent of public schools to examine the guidelines used for hiring plow drivers to include but not limited to truck size, equipment, and operator capability. I have received many complaints about undersized trucks plowing during the previous blizzard and complaints about damage to parked vehicles.
Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the motion, I'd like you to delete the section that says Revere Public Schools. This has been brought to my attention from a lot of residents, and then a letter appeared in the Journal, too, that I read about plowing of the city of Revere. The city yard did an excellent job. The workers did an excellent job for what they have. This is being addressed to the private companies that do the plowing. Either some of the trucks were too small, they couldn't handle the snow, they had no idea on how to plow. This is what a lot of residents have mentioned to me. And some of the streets that had one side parking, they still plowed the snow, they still did the plowing in the middle and didn't go curb to curb. So what I'm trying to do is talk to the superintendent, have him address the council on how they hire these drivers, proper plowing, because piles of snow were piled up on corners of different streets. People couldn't see exiting the different streets. It resulted in a serious safety hazard. And a lot of these small vehicles didn't have any placards. You didn't see a name on the truck. So they couldn't get any information if the truck was doing the proper job or not. And also, do we have somebody to go around and look at some of the plow work after they finish the streets, how the plowing is done? So these are a lot of questions I'd like the superintendent to ask, along maybe with the mayor. And how much are they being paid? You know, the small truck, the big truck. And a storm like this, you can't hire small pickup trucks to do a job with 2 feet of snow or 1.5 feet of snow. It's not going to happen. So, you know, we're paying for these small trucks, and they're not doing the job properly, and they're making more of a mess on some of these streets of snow. So, trying to address the issue to make sure we have the right private contractors do the job and plow snow properly in the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Councilor Hess.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with Councilor Correggio to some extent. With the magnitude of snow we had at that storm, we were lucky we had the people plowing that we did. Every city in town is calling for these heavy-duty equipments, and unless you have prior agreements with these major companies, they're going to go to whoever they have the prior commitment. I also would like to see all of the privates in Revere with their magnetic signs saying that they are plowing for the city of Revere. I think that will help us all out. It lets us all know, number one, who the person is. I understand DPW, they know who all the drivers are, but again, the lay people, us, we have no clue. So if you want to make a report, I know my neighborhood, it's done by quality. They seem to do a good job. Okay, they're not going to try to pile up in the corners as was the last storm because of the total depth of the snow. So I think the motion's good. We could entertain the superintendent, and I think it'll be a very good meeting, especially where we're coming to the end of the season, to prepare for hopefully for next year. Thank you.
Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the council's motion has merit. However, I do need to say that the public and the private contractors did very well in this past storm. Is there one or two that maybe had a small truck? I'm sure there was. But it is certainly appropriate to ask the DPW superintendent to come up here and give us his criteria and maybe the list of how the trucks are paid by 4-wheel, 6-wheel, 8-wheel, what the rate is. In another lifetime, I worked for the highway department, and all the hired vehicles had a sticker on their car that said hired to the state of Massachusetts or Mass Highway. Perhaps there's got to be a more uniformed way of identifying these private plow trucks. But I think very few of us had any problem with the work that was done in that major storm. I thought we came out better than most cities and towns, and so I think whatever the criteria is has been pretty good up to now, maybe just to come up and explain it. So I think the motion has merit so we can get a little more clarity, but certainly not to disparage any of the private contractors, because I think for the most part they did a great job. Thank you.
Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also think the motion has some merit, and I think Councilor Haas makes a good point when he speaks of placing signage on these trucks to identify who and who is not a city contractor on the city payroll to clean a certain area. I was out the night of the storm with Superintendent Goodwin, and I can tell you that the visibility was probably 6 to 8 feet if you were driving. Very, very difficult. And I had some people call me and they say, when is my street going to get plowed again? And we'd send a plow down, and then the next call would be for someone that had shoveled out and got plowed in. People have to understand and keep in mind that our first priority during any emergency, whether it be a heavy snowfall or whatever, that our first priority is to keep the streets open for public safety vehicles, fire, police, ambulance, etc. And that has to be paramount in our thinking, because if somebody's having a seizure or a medical event, that street has to be open, and particularly in certain areas where you've got a lot of elderly. So basically, I think the DPW did a good job, given what they had to work for. I think we also have to keep in mind that there are other agencies out there that probably have a higher pay scale for paying these larger pieces of equipment than the city has. So many times we have to use these small plows, but by and far, I'll say, I know the areas that I represent, were fairly clean with regard to getting emergency vehicles in and out of those areas, and that should be our primary concern, Mr. President. Thank you.
Councilor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think everybody is losing sight of the fact that we had a 27-inch storm. That's the 5th largest storm in the Commonwealth's history. We have a city ordinance that states we can't throw snow in the street. We have a city ordinance that states we must clean our sidewalks. Okay, what do I do? Put it in a teaspoon and melt it? What do I do with all this snow? And all the streets, and most of the streets that I represent, a big plow is no good, because I have cars parking on both sides of the street, and only a small truck can come down them. If we didn't have these people, these small trucks, I would be out of business in Ward 3. I have narrow streets, parking on both sides. And there is no place for these people to go other than park where they were parked. So I'm not suggesting that we remove all their cars, so where are they going to put them? I mean, in some place in all this conversation, common sense has to take place. And I'm just wondering And everybody has merit, because they're going to be naysayers out there that toss bombs at us or saying, oh, the street should have been cleaned off. I'm out there cleaning it too. And I have a outside agency that comes in and helps and assists afterward. He shows up very late, but he does show up. But my neighbors can attest, each and every one of them. I'm out there cleaning like everybody else does. And we're trying to be as neighborly as possible with one another. In the same terms, keeping public safety at the upper in our minds, because God forbid if an ambulance or a fire apparatus or a police car has to come to our homes to give us service, we want to make sure that they can get there. So if it requires us to have these, we do need, and I maintain we do need these small trucks to plow our streets. We do need to keep a force like that in check. And I, for one, was given the opportunity. I'd go out and let them do their job, and a day later I'd make my rounds. And for the most part, I was very satisfied. There were some areas that needed some attention, but for the most part, I was, again, I'm trying to be as objective as possible. 27 inches of snow here. It's a lot of snow. And so I give credit to everybody. I think they did a heck of a good job. And, there are areas that people are going to be sitting at home saying, what's he talking about, They didn't do this and they didn't. Well, we got a big city. I'm talking about the big picture, all of us. And there are areas that probably do need a little bit of improvement, and I'm hoping that we can attend to that. But for God's sakes, 27 inches of snow is a lot of snow. And so give credit where it's due. I think they did a good job.
Councilor Penta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I tend to agree with Councilor Granasso and Councilor Haas. They both had excellent things to say. In other words, if you didn't have these small trucks, some of these streets wouldn't be touched. You couldn't get down with the big trucks. The other thing, we didn't have enough big trucks. They coordinate those storms. I've been down there many times, and I've seen you down there, Councilor, Mr. President, that they coordinate the hills with trucks that have sand and salt. They coordinate different main drags with heavy trucks. Unfortunately, the city probably tried to get another 100 big trucks this storm, but couldn't. I think Councilor Haas-Granasso said it. They go to the state, they get more money. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. But without the small plows, and Councilor Granasso made a good point of 27 inches. We've got 2 to 3 inches an hour. So if you've got a block that you're doing, you may not hit that street for a couple hours. You're at 6 inches already. Yeah, is it too much for those big plows? Probably. So they go down the middle. You can't back up and keep going. It doesn't work that way. So all in all, I think with the snow we had, I think it was a great thing. Councilor Haas come up with a great idea because it makes them accountable to subcontractors. Put something on it, plowing for City of Revere with a phone number or a number of a truck or something. So if a resident sees them doing something wrong, sitting in a corner sleeping, or whatever they may be doing, they have some, something to go off. I think that's a great idea. So I don't know if Councilor Haas wants to put that in as a motion or part of it. That's an excellent idea. With that being said, thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Vice President Chenino.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Granasso took the words right out of my mouth. I agree 100% with everything he said about, the size of the storm and the plows. Personally, I think that the big problem in this storm was not the private contractors we had plowing for the city. It was the private trucks that were plowing on their own, not for the city, for private residences that were, affecting the corners and those big piles that we saw. And a huge, huge problem in this storm wasn't the plows at all. It was the people shoveling the snow back into the street. So a lot of times when you woke up in the morning, streets had already been plowed 2 or 3 times, but your neighbors shoveled the snow back into the street. So you might wake up and say, oh my God, my street wasn't plowed, but it was. Your neighbors filled it back in. So, if we could all kind of think about that during the next storm, which hopefully we don't have another giant one like we did last time. But, I really commend the city and the plows that worked for the city for the storm because they really did what they had to do. And I think that Councilor Haas's idea should definitely be added into the motion. I'm definitely for that because it would make sense because then people wouldn't, look at the truck and see, oh, I don't know who it is, or, oh, they're doing something wrong. It can be addressed right away so we don't have to talk about it a month later. Thank you.
Councilor Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I think everybody's said some sensible things here. First of all, I think they considering all the issues, the breakdowns in trucks and stuff like that, and as Councilor Granasso said, the epical amount of snow that we had, I think the job was well done. On the other hand, Councilor Correggio's motion simply asks us to re-examine the guidelines, I believe, and I think that's not a bad idea. In fact, I don't even know what the guidelines are, quite honestly. I don't generally profess to my own ignorance, but that's certainly about this I am. And I would really like to see the guidelines, and then once we see the guidelines, perhaps we can make several suggestions to address some of the issues that might be more notorious, and go forward from there. So I think if we could get our hands on the guidelines, maybe we could examine them with the superintendent and make some suggestions to reconstruct them, so to speak, given our present-day situation. Thank you, Mr. President.
If I may, before I let Councilor Correggio and Hess say anything afterwards, before this, Councilor, I agree with everybody, first of all. You know, DPW did a great job, and even the small trucks did a good job where they could. But let me say, Councilor Reardon brought up a point that the motion just states that the DPW superintendent examine the guidelines. It doesn't ask him to come up to the city council. It doesn't ask him to go into the public works department. So if we're going to pass this now, all we're doing is sending a note to them and say, Jeff, examine your guidelines, which we have no clue what they are. So if I may make a recommendation to Councilor Correggio that we ask the superintendent to appear before the Public Works Committee to examine the guidelines with us and provide a copy of the guidelines that they have. I know Councilor Penter and I, probably know what the guidelines are. The superintendent picks the size of equipment that goes out, and there's a standard rate for the size of the vehicle that is hired. A truck that is a pickup truck, a F-150 or a 1500 may get $50 an hour. A six-wheel truck may get $70 an hour. So this is how they pay. But he determines what vehicles go in what areas depending on the size of the street and the size of equipment he needs. So, and I don't mind you adjusting the motion, a friendly amendment that we ask the superintendent to appear before the Public Works Committee. Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Mr. President. You can add in with the motion, as Councilor Haas recommended, the placards to make sure it says Revere on there with all hired vehicles.
If I can make a recommendation that that be included when we talk to the superintendent as a recommendation at that point, because one thing I do want to say, I travel in Boston a lot during snowstorms besides being in Revere. And the city of Boston has those flags on the windows. You know how you have the Patriot flags and stuff on the window? And all the trucks, all their trucks that are privates, have an orange flag that says City of Boston on it. So that may be another idea that we give to the superintendent to buy some of those flags and give to the private contractors so the people know that truck works for the city of Revere and all they have to do is get a license plate number. Because even if they had a placard, people couldn't see it. So that's my recommendation. On the amended motion, all in favor, all opposed, vote and so voted. Thank you.
Late motion presented by Councilor Arrigo that the mayor provide the City Council with the following documentation regarding the bond orders required to construct the Staff Sergeant James J. Hill School. Detailed budgets for each of the bond authorizations that were presented to the Council, the city's current debt service schedule, principal interest total over the next 20 years before the bonds that were presented to the Council, the city's anticipated debt service schedule, a list of all bonded capital projects the city is still paying for, including the amount originally authorized, the interest rate the city is paying, the amount that the city has paid to date, the amount the city owes, and the projected date that the project would be paid off. A master capital planning document, a list of MSBA reimbursed projects in the city showing the total budget, the time of the bond authorization, the amount of reimbursement by the MSBA, and the final total cost for each project, and a review of the long-term financial impact of the proposed bond authorization from the city's independent auditor, Powers and Sullivan.
Councilor Arrigo.
Thank you, Mr. President. After we got the $55 million bond authorizations, I had requested this information from the mayor's office, and it's been 2.5 weeks now, and I know that we're having a financial summit on Saturday, and I'm hoping that, well, it's my hope that this information is presented on Saturday or given to us before Saturday. I do look forward to having the conversation. I think that some of this information is very important as we go forward and debate the merits of bonding $55 million. And I think that we need to each take the time to analyze and look into what the impact will be in the future. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Councilor Penta.
I have no problem with the motion at all. The only thing I do want to do is the mayor is having a summit on Saturday, and exactly for these things, so he must have final figures, because he stood in front of us not too long ago saying he didn't have the final figures for the St. Mary's Park, what that would cost, and whatever. But he must hopefully has the final figures, and you always get the bond, schedule. But that being said, the only thing I do want to say is I keep hearing this figure, $55 million. It's almost like yelling fire in a show where there's no fire. I mean, there's $30 million being reimbursed by the state. The $55 million, $5,500 for the stadium is $2.7 million. There's different pay schedules on this too. There could be bonds coming out. So $55 million it's something you have to do as bond, but it's paid back with a different schedule. And I'm looking forward to seeing the schedule. So, I mean, my calculations and figures, just going over very quickly what I know and what I've been part of during the course of the past 6 months, in public, every one of them in public, either at this podium or out in the street at an event, the figures that were said. You're probably looking at over 30 years, less than 0.75% to 1% over 30 years, which now you weigh out what you're getting for that. But just $55 million is not the final cost of this thing. It's just a lot less than that. We're getting reimbursed money. So it's just that, this thing said in the paper, I see people in coffee shop, $55 million, where's the city going to get it? We don't have to pay $55 million back. So that's all I want to say, because there's people out there watching the meeting, and it's not even close to $55 million. So thank you, Mr. President.
Point of information, Mr. President.
What's your point of information, Councilor?
The cost has gone from $8.3 million on the city side to $23 million. So I think that that increase is worth having a full discussion about. Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, point of information.
With all due respect,
point of information.
We're going to be discussing this. Excuse me, Councilor.
Well, there's false information going out to the public.
They will find out on Saturday, Councilor.
I'll give you facts and figures and tell me if they're wrong, Mr. President.
Councilor, we will
the
find out.
The school issue is separate than the stadium.
Councilor, we will
Mr.
find out on Saturday. That's why we're having this. That's why we're having this.
I don't know why. I mean,
this
meeting's not going to last for another 5 minutes, but you're trying to rush things through. This is a very important issue.
Of course it is.
Very important issue. People are running to the newspapers. It's an emergency. It's out there. It's shock and awe.
Councilor, with all due respect,
Mr. President, you don't
with all
want
due
people to
respect,
speak
that's
here.
not
Don't
your
have a
point of
meeting.
information.
Don't have a meeting. You don't want people to
Councilor
speak here.
Mr. President, I think just basically we need a breakdown of all of the items before us and know exactly, what the school is going to cost and what's involved with the stadium and et cetera. So if we can get that breakdown and get an idea where we're at, and hopefully with the summit we can probably resolve a lot of matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, there was $55 million. Granted, and it's been discussed here repeatedly, that we're getting an 80% reimbursement here. So everybody should know that it's not $55 million. But last I checked, $30 million is a lot of money. I look forward to hearing from the mayor as to the situation, as to how we're going to pay for it. And I take this motion by Councilor Rigo, which is excellently worded and excellently written, to essentially say that. Unfortunately, my view is that this is we put the cart before the horse on this one. This information should have been imparted to us prior to the asking for the money. On the other hand, if we get the information, as I expect we will on Saturday, and as you suggest, we should not jump to conclusions until, as both of you suggest actually, we should not jump to conclusions until we get the information. So I would strongly urge everybody who has an interest in this to attend and be attentive on Saturday, because we do have to make some serious decisions in the next several weeks. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Hess.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with the motion. I think it's well needed. We should have had the information prior to the scheduled meeting, which I was just notified last Friday that the following Saturday we're going to have a workshop to assemble all the people involved. I think we should have been notified a lot longer than 1 week in advance. I will not make it. I had a prior commitment out of state, and I'll just have to hope that the information is given to me as it's given to all the councilors and the citizens. There will be citizens here Monday, Saturday at, I guess, 12 o'clock. I think the information is without question needed. We're looking at, some people say 55 million, but then you have the 30%, the 70 or 80% reimbursement. Once and for all, we'll find out what the total cost will be on all of the bond orders. Okay, and I think that's needed for anyone to make an intelligent decision at this point in time. Granted, we're going to, the Grossman has done very well for Revere, as the previous treasurer has done. They looked at Revere very favorably as far as our school issues. But again, the cost, we have to analyze what the cost is and what the implications will be to our taxpayers and people that pay taxes in Revere. I think it's very important, so I'm looking to get the information that's disseminated this Saturday. Thank you.
Councilor Zambruto.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the motion is a good motion. I support it wholeheartedly. I think there are a few things here. I'm happy that the administration has decided to have this economic summit, because there is hysteria in the street. I'm sure you've been confronted, as I have, in coffee shops and in supermarkets, and people are, you know, yes, there is an 80% reimbursement for the school portion of this. There's a lot of other items that were presented all at once here, and a lot of them have no reimbursement. So there's a lot of information that not only the council doesn't have, but the people certainly don't have, and they're panicked. So anything, motions such as this, the economic summit that we're having on Saturday, the public hearing that's coming up, any of this stuff is all good. Information is good, because when people see figures like $55 million in the newspaper, they start to panic, and they're worried about how much their tax bill is going to be next year, because they couldn't barely pay it this year. So, you know, these are reasonable things, and I don't think anybody's trying to put anybody under the gun. We just need all the full information before we vote to affect people's futures here. Thank you.
Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had occasion to speak with George Anzoni, Director of Finance, last week, and he informed me, and I had asked him also, that I said I'd like to see an updated debt schedule, and I said I think all of the councilors should have an updated debt schedule, and he agreed to provide us with that. You know, when I look at I have a debt schedule that's probably 2 years old, $100 million in bonded debt and debt service. And we're not even talking about the Garfield School that could cost us a couple of $1 million down there for the siding falling off the school. You know, I said originally I'd vote for a new McKinley School, and I'll keep that commitment from McKinley School, 80% financed by the state. However, I remember when the school department came before this city council and they said, we want to bond $85 million, we're going to build 5 new schools, and all it's going to cost you is $8.5 million. That was beautiful. Only a fool would, not do that. But that's changed. All the dynamics have changed. You know, I see all of these extras. I go out to dinner, I order a meal. Sometimes I don't have the appetizers because I can't afford them. Sometimes I don't have the dessert because I can't afford them. And I think that's what all of us have to look at, Mr. President. Build a school, fine, but do we need all of these extras right now? I don't think we can even afford them, whether we need them or not. Thank you, Mr. President.
Council Guanasso.
I think people might have been alarmed at the $55 million. I think they should have. I think they're going to be alarmed at the $23 million that we're talking about. We're not talking about $20 here. We're talking about $23 million, to which I would suggest that we just get through doing the Paul Revere School, which, I bear that heavy chip on my shoulder because we had to downsize the Paul Revere School because of finances. Did we overpay maybe for the purchasing of properties to complete the school? In that particular case, we needed to purchase the properties because we couldn't build a school without them. And did we pay a very high price? Yes, we did. But that was the cost of doing business. We wanted to secure those properties to make sure we had a school. But let it be known, we had to downsize the school, and I was very angry with that. I'm angry to this day because when I heard from talking to proper sources, before the shovel was in the ground, they knew that the school was too small. That kind of upsets me. That's like taking money and throwing it out the window. That's very, very upsetting for me to hear from an official that the school is too small and we haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet. That's not right. That's not doing our school children justice. And I might add, the Paul Revere School is an innovative school. It's not a local area school. It's an innovative school where children come from throughout the city to attend that school. All the more that should have been given attention, as was the middle school in Rumney Marsh Academy. We attract children from all over the city in that location. I just don't understand. And now and some people are suggesting to me that $23 million, well, $23 million is a lot of money. I'm concerned about that. And I really want the kids at the McKinley School to have a new school. I really do. And I'm going to vote for a new school. But I'm going to vote for one that we can afford, not one that we're hoping to afford. $23 million. I'm very anxious for the summit. I was wishing that it was on a weekday from 5 to 7. A weekday would give more opportunity, I think, for the people residents of our community. But I had no say as to when that meeting was going to take place. Sadly, a lot of people have that only one day to do things for their families. It's a very difficult time. But I'm still, and we are getting 80% reimbursed. But so what? We're talking big numbers here. And Councilor Rigo, stay on this because it sounds like sentence for sentence here. You're right on target. I think it's a terrific motion. And I'm sure that we have a learned source out there. Judge Anzoni is a very well-rounded guy who's been through all the schools. He's bonded for all of them. He has the shots for all of them. And if anybody can do creative financing, it's going to be George Anzoni. And to the mayor's credit, he retained George to do such a thing like this. So I look forward to this information coming forward. But whether it be whatever it's fashion that comes in, $23 million is a lot of money. And I'm not sure the city of Revere can afford all that indebtedness. Thank you.
Madam Vice President.
Thank you. First of all, Councilor Rigo, I think this is a great motion, and I support you 100% with your efforts on this. It's something that we all need to be aware of. I myself have to work to pay to go to school, so I will not be able to go on Saturday because I need at least a month's notice to request a day off from work, which is why usually when we get our monthly schedule sent out, I know what days I can request off and what days I can't. And, getting only 7 days notice for this, I can't request a day off, so I unfortunately can't be there. But I definitely want more answers about this, and that's a lot of money. When we're talking millions of dollars here, never mind, we talk about the money we pay for plows and the money we pay for this and the money we pay for that. These are millions of dollars that the taxpayers are paying, so I really want more information about this. And I look forward to hearing what happens at this meeting, and hopefully we can schedule another one that we can all be in attendance of and have better planned. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think a lot's been said as far as, and I agree with many of you. I can congratulate Councilor Arrigo for putting this in again. And I just happened to be looking through our minutes of our last meeting. It was January 18th that you put that motion in, that you requested some additional information. So March 4th, of course. And but I know all this information will come forth on Saturday when we get here. And while I'm at it, and I have the floor with the motion at hand, the financial summit will be held this Saturday at 12 o'clock, and it will be broadcast on Revere TV.
Mr. President, is that the mayor's meeting or your meeting?
It is the mayor's meeting.
So maybe I'll get to speak then. Thank you.
Sure you will. You can speak now, as long as it's in order, Councilor. On the motion, all in favor, all opposed, vote in so ordered.
Late motion presented by Councilor Powers that the Superintendent of Public Works or designee appear before the Committee on Public Works on March 11th, 2013 at 5 p.m. to advise said committee as to what caused the malfunction of the tide gate that services the Eastern County Ditch. Further, that the City Council be advised as to what steps need to be taken to prevent any further occurrences or failure of the tide gate in question. Also, that the City Council be advised as to what steps need to be taken to correct the problems in the area of 611 to 660 Revere Beach Boulevard to prevent raw sewage from backing up into homes in that area.
Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Needless to say, I had a busy Friday and Saturday and Sunday with people calling me about the flooding in the Oak Island area, the Lower Revere Street area, down around Bay Road, Sagamore Street, all of the areas that are serviced by the Eastern County Ditch. And I found out there was a problem with the tide gate out there. That's the $1 million facility that was put in about, I think, 12 years ago. I think Mayor Haas was the mayor then. And it wasn't functioning. It wasn't closing or opening. The water was staying in the area. I went down to Arcadia Street, Ellerton Street, and there were 8 or 9 inches of water on the street in front of people's homes. Now, the purpose of that tide gate was to eliminate that, so we'd never have to worry about that again. As a matter of fact, 3 years ago, Mayor Ambrosino spent close to $1 million down there in tripling the capacity of the drainage down there on those streets, repaving the streets, etc. And it was working fine until the tide gate didn't work. And what I would like to know is who is responsible for maintaining that tide gate, for checking it, to make sure that it's operational. I hope that this will never, ever happen again to the residents down there. I get calls down on the boulevard. There's a gravity-fed line from 611 down to the pump station. That line I was down there looking at it Saturday afternoon with the DPW. The line is flat. It's bellied out. Whenever you get heavy rain or sewage down there, these people are getting raw sewage back in their house. That should be unacceptable. We're talking tonight about whether or not we should spend whatever it is, 30, 40, $50 million on schools, and we've got people that are experiencing raw sewage in their homes. That should be one of our first priorities, Mr. President. So I intend, with your permission, to have a meeting on the 11th of this month at 5 o'clock. I'd just like to get some answers. Let's find out. Maybe there's a way that when that tide gate malfunctions, somebody can be notified, whether it's through an automatic caller or whatever the case may be, to make sure we get down there and address it as quickly as possible. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Hess.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this is uncalled for. I think we really have to get involved with who's responsible, why is it malfunctioning again, and as Council Powers indicated, we have put an awful lot of money into that area, and to have it malfunction at this point in time, I think it's appalling. I think it's a lack of leadership somewhere. I don't know where. I think we have to resolve the issue. These people get flooded time in and time out, self-regulating gate. They should be checked prior to any impending storm to make sure it's clear. I myself get on ASCII and Toscano every time there's a heavy rainfall to make sure the gates are clean, and Superintendent Goodwin makes sure that those gates are cleaned, because if debris filters into the gate, it jams the gate, and naturally the water has no place to go other than back. So I think the motion has great merit, and I'm sure if we have the superintendent coming up next week, he'll bring us up to date. Now, I'm not sure if there's any guarantees on the work that was done when former Mayor Ambrosino was there, but we should really check it out once and for all. Thank you.
Councilor Correggio.
Thank you, Mr. President. The motion has a lot of merit. I know there was serious flooding down in the Pines area, Boulevard. What I suggest is if we can contact the company that put in the tie gates and get them to come up here and where we can ask questions along with the superintendent to find out why it's not working properly. Thank you.
On the motion, all in favor, all opposed, voting so ordered.
Late motion presented by Councilor Zambuto that the mayor request the financial manager of the school department to provide the city council with proof of reimbursement to the general fund for snow removal per agreement.
Councilor Zambuto.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just kind of an auditing thing. For 9 or 10 years, of being on the council, former Mayor Ambrosino and myself had round-to-round go-arounds about the fact that the school department was only paying $20,000 a year in reimbursement to the DPW for the snow plowing. Now, we all know that one storm you could spend $20,000 on salt, and it was really ridiculously unrealistic to get that kind of a reimbursement with the manpower that the city has to put into keeping the school department clean. We all know about net school spending and all the rest, and how much money goes to the school department, and it has to go there, and we understand that. But they have to pay their fair share when it comes to snow removal. So a few years back, the former mayor and I had an agreement that it would be bumped up to $100,000 a year. Now, it was for at least 1 year, and I'm not sure it may be every year, but I don't have proof of that. So I simply want to see that that's what's happening, that the city's being reimbursed from the school department, which $100,000 probably still won't cover it, especially when you have a storm like the storm we had of 27 inches. That would have been at least a $100,000 storm. So bottom line is just to make sure that we're on the same playing field that we thought we were, and that's why I want some proof. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilor. On the motion, all in favor, all opposed, voting so ordered. Before we adjourn, a few administrative issues. Our next meeting is next Monday, which is March 11th. We will have public hearings for the bond issues, and I will let everybody know that this place will be packed, and I expect it to be packed from both sides. And I've heard from both sides, and I would ask for those organizations that are coming to speak that they bring a representative to speak. We will not allow 200 people to speak that evening. We'd ask that an organization like the PTO or the teachers union pick a representative to say their piece. We will ask for a raise of hands to see who in the audience is for or against, similar to what we did at last public hearing. And we will have sign-in sheets either outside the door or inside for people to sign in to show they were here and to show whether they were an opponent or proponent. We've also arranged to have a TV and chairs set up in the old auditorium behind us for those who can't get into this room that evening. I'm expecting a lot of people, and I want everybody to be able to see what's going on, whether it's live or on TV or close to being live. So that will be made, we will make that happen. Another item, I had told everybody that March 11th we were going to have a facility dude meeting from the mayor's office. Miles was going to show us how the facility dude works here in the chamber, but it turns out it cannot be done here in the chamber, so we're going to have a training session on April 22nd at 4 o'clock in the new training room behind us. So anybody that wants to know about the facility dude and city stat, we will have the training. Everybody will have their own computer and be able to utilize it and learn how to use the system and be able to teach people how to put in work orders on their own. So that's down the road. So with that, I have a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. All in favor, opposed, vote and so ordered. Thank you very much.